Welcome to the Bring Me to Life podcast. Here are your hosts, CeeLo Mon and Shannon Shine.
Hi everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Project Bring Me to Life podcast. We are glad that you decided to wake up and shine on with us.
Yeah, this is episode 2 of season 3, and today we are going to talk with a man by the name of Brent, and he talks about conscious creation. Might also be known as the law of attraction. He talks about how you can, create that life. You write your own script. You live the movie that you want to live.
Which makes sense, because I always say life's a movie anyway. So it's a really awesome interview. You should stay tuned, and thank you for shining light this evening.
Welcome to Project Bring Me to Life. Bringing to life the conscious arts. Giving a voice to spirituality. Covering art, music, metaphysics and holistic health.
Looking for messages from your spirit guides, ancestors, and/or ascended masters? Need help understanding more about twin flames? Introducing Patrizia Luna. She's a psychic, medium, master Reiki healer, and spiritual coach with over 20 years of experience. She does angel moon rituals, tarot and oracle readings. She has direct communication with angels, ascended masters, and the ancestors. Discover your gifts and open doors to your spiritual path. Contact her today via email at patriziabazil04@yahoo.ca and on Instagram at patrizia_luna. Alright, and welcome back to the show, everybody. We're now going to introduce our guest, and Brent Marchant is an author. He has written books such as Consciously Created Cinema, The Movie Lover's Guide to the Law of Attraction, and Get the Picture, Conscious Creation Goes to the Movies. He's a featured contributor for Vivid Life magazine and Smart Women's Empowerment, as well as a contributor to New Consciousness Review and the Library Journal magazine. So, welcome to the show, Brett.
Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate being here.
Definitely. It's a great pleasure to have you as well, and we've been waiting to have you on. Love books, love reading, love movies, so this is a very fitting subject, I believe, for us.
And you get them all in one.
We get them all in one package.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I would like to ask you about your Smart Women's Empowerment, maybe a little bit further into the interview, but to start out, let's go back in time before you wrote the books. How did you get into metaphysics and, as you like to call it, the conscious creation?
Well, I've been interested in metaphysics, philosophy, alternative spirituality, any term you want to use to describe it, really almost as far back as when I was a kid. I came up in a fairly traditional religious upbringing that didn't quite satisfy me, so I developed an interest quite early on that I studied through college, and then I studied as an adult and so forth. And when I was in my early 30s, I had a number of personal setbacks that kind of knocked out a lot of the pillars that formed the foundation of my life. So I was at a point where I needed to rebuild. And it was around that time that the conscious creation or law of attraction material, and it really resonated with me in a big way, because I said, if I need to reinvent my ways to do it. And that's where I took a strong interest in it, and I've been working with it personally ever since. Mm-hmm. Now, as far as the movie angle, that also goes back to when I was a kid. I've been going to the movies probably since I was about 4 or 5 years old, and I've always been fascinated by it. And basically, when I would have a lot of kind of everyday conversations with people, a lot of times I'd refer to movies for analogy purposes. If I wanted to describe a particular situation or something, I'd say, that reminds me from such and such a movie, or reminds me of a line from such and such a movie. and people would always grasp what I was talking about. So years later, when I got involved with the conscious creation and law of attraction material, started explaining it to people in terms of how I used it to turn my life around. I would explain it initially in theoretical terms, and I get a lot of blank stares looking back at me. And I thought, I need to come up with a better way of being able to explain this. So then it occurred to me, well, you've been doing this, you've been using movies for analogy your entire life. Why don't you do the same thing here? So I did, and as soon as I started doing that to explain how conscious creation works, I could see light bulbs going off over people's heads.
Yeah,
so
sure.
that little realization essentially then led to the books and the online writings, because I found that was probably the easiest way to connect with people and let them know how they can draw upon movies as examples for inspiration, enlightenment, and entertainment to learn how to use these principles in their own lives.
That's awesome. So you were using different movie analogies to really walk people through situations. I think that's awesome because a lot of times I've talked to people and we just decide that life is a movie. So it's easy to relate it to movies. Can you give us maybe an example of a situation and how it kind of goes along with the movie?
Well, sure. What I did essentially in both of the books is I've taken, I've provided a roadmap to readers, taking them theoretically from the point where they would know little or nothing about how the process works to a point where they can start to make use of it in very effective ways. So when I look, for example, in the opening chapter of Get the Picture, one of the movies I talk about is the film called Under the Tuscan Sun, which came out back, I believe, in 2003. And it features the story of a woman who's at midlife. She's been more or less bankrupted and was in a position in many ways that was very similar to my own. She needed to rebuild. And she ends up kind of fumbling her way through things. She has a vague idea of what she wants, but little does she realize that she's actually creating the life that she wants and needs to become consciously aware of it. And once she does, again, you start to see the light bulbs going off over her head, so she can see that she really is manifesting that she's having, and it is, fulfilling the dream itself. So it's a really good, I would say, a really good primer in terms of showing people how this process works and how they can make it, put it to use in their own lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and before this interview, we were talking on LinkedIn, and you mentioned how your life was falling apart. You said that you had lost a job of 13 years. Your relationship ended after about 5 years, within a matter of a few months. How did that? Yeah. How did that affect your life path?
Well, it basically caused me to make a very abrupt left turn from where I had been prior to that point. Mm-hmm. In many ways, when I had fulfilled both of those aspirations of having a successful career and having what I thought was a satisfying relationship, I had kind of run the course essentially in terms of how far those accomplishments or creations were going to take me. And it was time for me to go on to the next step, which was really greater fulfillment, although I didn't necessarily see it that way at the time. Having to rebuild forced me to see that. And, if somebody were to ask me now, would I go back to where I was, I would say definitely not. Although if you would ask me that at one point, I probably would have said, you're crazy. How could I possibly leave this behind? This is fulfilling. It's satisfying. But it was designed to get me to a point where I could then make a bigger jump in terms of, and that involved, not only the tangible experience that I've had, but also the spiritual and metaphysical growth that I've had personally.
Yeah, I know that, a lot of people are in jobs that they really do enjoy. but something happens where they lose that, and then they think everything is ended, you know, my life is going downhill, but then another door opens up to even greater life and even greater possibilities. I think it's great that you do conscious creation and that you talk about movies and you reference that to like the law of attraction and stuff like that. I think that's absolutely brilliant, especially because a lot of us in America, you know, we really enjoy movies. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of great movies that I'm very excited about coming out.
It's a way for people to get the ideas in a way that's both entertaining and enlightening. Mm-hmm. You know, if you were to sit down and say, well, let's discuss this purely in theoretical terms, I'm sure you'd find a lot of people nodding off very quickly. Yeah. So by combining it with the tangible examples that the stories and movies provide, you find a way to, you know, hold their interest and you know, they get the point while being entertained at the same time. Mm-hmm. And it's not to say that I'm saying that people need to be, you know, babysat to get this material. But when you look throughout history, most of the major philosophical, religious, spiritual, metaphysical traditions have nearly always relied on story, getting their points across. So in many ways, I believe that movies are just the latest incarnation of that particular means of conveying information. The one difference is that now you don't have to rely exclusively on the written word. Mm-hmm. You have the sights and the sounds to heighten the impact and make the message, I think, that much more compelling. And that's a good thing. I mean, if it drives it home better, then, you know, so much for it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember in the beginning of your book, you're talking about how movies really allowed you to immerse yourself in the story and immerse yourself in that experience. Does that affect people if they're trying to manifest something, sort of immersing them in a like a story or a movie like that?
I think it does because, you know, one of the things that gets talked about frequently when you employ conscious creation or law of attraction principles is that people are encouraged to envision the outcome in terms of not only being able to picture it in their minds, but also to sort of vicariously experience the sensations that go with it, the sights, the sounds, the smells, the feelings. And if you go into a movie theater and you're finding that you're watching a film that is particularly inspiring, and particularly if you're sitting up close and it's got a great sound system, the impact almost kind of permeates through you as you're sitting there wildly, helps to heighten the senses, helps to increase your awareness of the message it's trying to convey, heightens the inspiration that it's providing to you in terms of, you know, how you can use it to make changes in your life for the ways that you want to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've noticed that, especially if you're at a really nice theater, like really comfortable seat. Sometimes I feel like I pretty much my awareness leaves my body and just kind of goes into that movie for a while.
It really is like stepping into another world. I mean, whenever I go to the theater, I always sit close. Mm-hmm. And these days with a lot of theaters now offering reserved seating and they ask you to pick your seat before you go in, a lot of times I'll be in the first couple of rows and they'll say, you know, this is the screen that you're going to be up close against. I said, yeah, that's fine. Mm-hmm. No need to ask me twice.
That's awesome. Since you relate life to movies a lot, do you ever feel like life is a movie, or do you kind of attract that feeling to yourself at all?
That thought has crossed my mind on occasion, sure. In fact, one of the things I really try to encourage people to do is to, you know, draw from the inspiration of movies to write the script of their own lives. And yeah, it does feel that way to me many times. And I've often said when I get into certain situations, sometimes people say, well, why did you stick out that situation longer than you did? It's because I said I wanted to see how the movie was going to end.
That's so true. That's so true. I've been there. Yeah, and there's just certain times where things happen in our reality where it's like, man, that had to have been in a movie. It was just too perfectly timed or anything like. But then there's always that everything happens for a reason, which kind of reminded me of what you said earlier when you were going through a really hard time and you had to take that hard left turn. Like, if there wasn't that plot twist in the movie, then it would have been a boring movie. Just like, would have been boring kind of maybe just staying in the same thing. And you really needed that push and that shift.
Well, there are a number of instances where I think people find that if they look back on their lives and they look at the different experiences that they've had, all of them have been essential to bringing them to the point that they're at. And if they're at a point in their lives where they're really happy and satisfied with things, they'll realize that all the different pieces of the puzzle that led up to that point were essential to get them to that particular point. They all had a way of contributing significantly to get them to reach the point that they're at. And they might not necessarily be aware of that as they're going through each of the experiences. But when they look at the sum total collectively of how they played out, again, everyone was positively essential. I know that's true from my own experience. I look back on the different experiences I've had, and I realize that I wouldn't be where I am now if I hadn't had them, for good or for bad.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like, looking back, one thing I like to kind of reminisce on is when I went to college, I changed my major about 3 or 4 times. And each time I was like, man, I'm adding a couple more years to my time here. And it was just frustrating. But then after I finally graduated and I started doing exactly what I'm doing, I realized each time I changed course, the courses I got before I changed were exactly what I needed to do what I do now. So if I wouldn't have done it that way, I would have left out an essential part of what I needed. So it just kind of all worked out, even though then I was miserable and in class all day.
Well, and that helps to illustrate how the law of attraction literally comes to work, because you are drawing to you the experiences you need to get you to the point that you need to get to. This is where, the power of our thoughts and beliefs and intents combines with the power of the universe to create the circumstances that get us to where we need to go. One film that is really good at illustrating that is, I talk about in Consciously Created Cinema. It's a little-known movie that was created by the Coen brothers, who are known for making movies like Fargo and so forth. They made a movie a couple of years ago called The Serious Man, where there's this sort of he's an everyman, and he's constantly beset by a series of trials and tribulations, and yet each one takes him closer to being to where he wants to get to. Of course, as soon as he gets there, he's beset by another challenge. But then again, that sort of ups the ante in terms of him getting to where he wants to go to. And then he gets another reward for fulfillment, and another challenge, and another reward, and another challenge, and so on. And I find that a lot of times, the collection of all those different experiences is essential to lead us to where we want to get to, especially when we reach a point of satisfaction. It's all paid off, along the path to get us to that point.
Yeah. So I would like to get more detailed into the law of attraction. What do you think is the main sort of guiding force of the law of attraction? Like, what is something that people should definitely focus on if they want to attract something to their life?
Well, I would say to understand the core principle is that you create the reality you experience with your thoughts, beliefs, and intents. The notions that you put out, the universe will pick up on and sort of serve as a collaborator to create the circumstances to bring you the experience that you want to get. Becoming cognizant of that particular point, I think, is the most important, the most crucial element of how to make use of the system. The other thing that goes with that is understanding that it's at work all the time. It's not a salad bar. You can't pick and choose that, well, I created this, but the other thing just kind of happened to me. You're working 24/7 to bring about all these experiences, for better or worse. And if it ends up being something that you're disappointed with, the thing to do instead of getting frustrated would be to stand back and ask yourself, okay, why did I create these circumstances? Mm-hmm. Why did these conditions come to me? And a lot of times if you take that approach to it, the answer will come to you relatively quickly, because you'll be able to say, oh, yeah, that's why that happened. Oh, well, okay, I don't want to do that again. So now I know how I can kind of fine-tune my beliefs and the intents for what I want as I move forward. And I think when people do that, they find that the next time they'll get results, much more in line with what they said they wanted to get in the first place.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely brilliant. And what is there any difference at all between the law of attraction and as you call it, conscious creation?
I would say that the terms are virtually indistinguishable. I think in a lot of cases it comes down to a question of semantics more than anything else. Personally, I prefer the term conscious creation because it sounds a little more proactive on the part of the person who is, creating the experience. Law of attraction to me sounds a little more passive. It's kind of like you sort of sit back and wait for the universe to bring to you the results that you want. And essentially, that is how it happens to a certain degree. But I don't know. I like conscious creation because it makes it sound like you're involving yourself in the process a little more actively than law of attraction does.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Is that term something that you came up with?
No, actually, the term conscious creation has really been around for quite some time. The material that really inspired me to look at this philosophy in great depth came from the works of an author named Jane Roberts, who channeled an entity named Seth back in the 60s, 70s, and early 80s. And their collaboration over the years produced about, close to 30 books of material related to different aspects of conscious creation. The collective works are incredibly kind of exploring the philosophy from a whole variety of different angles. And that's really where the term sort of got its beginnings in many ways. Many of the people who have gone on to be proponents of the law of attraction actually sort of got their start from reading the Jane Roberts material years before. And somewhere along the line, the term law of attraction appeared, although again, I think if you ask them where they got their start, they'd look to the Jane Roberts material and say, yeah, conscious creation is where it began.
I love that. I do love the fact that, conscious creation is sort of saying you're involved with the process. I do like that a lot.
Well, I mean, it really does come to embody the notion of you create your own reality, which is the kind of the catchphrase that conscious creation relies on. I mean, you could even take it somewhat more matter of fact and say life is what you make of it. I mean, that sounds kind of almost cliched or greeting card like, but it really does capture the essence.
Yeah, that's something that you had at the beginning of your book, Consciously Created Cinema, I believe, is that you create your own life.
Yep.
Yeah, there. I saw something in your book, and it was pretty interesting. It said that you come up with the question after you say that life is what you make of it. You go on with the question of, is this idea possible, or is it some warm, fuzzy, new age hype?
Well, I think there are some people who kind of treat the subject in a lightweight manner, and when they do, they sometimes verge into what I would call wishful thinking, which is not really the same thing as conscious creation. When they hear the idea of how this philosophy works, they may very flippantly say, oh, okay, I'll believe this from now on. Well, do you really? Or are you just mouthing the words? There's a distinction between being able to say, I truly believe what I'm saying and feeling it with a kind of a heartfelt, almost faith-like kind of way, as opposed to just saying, okay, I'll do this from now on. And I think a lot of times people who take that latter approach, they end up disappointed because they say, well, I said that's what I wanted from now on. Well, yeah, but did you really feel it? Did you really believe it? And that's when they end up saying, well, maybe not. I said, well, that's why it seems like it doesn't work. So the ones who end up pursuing that kind of more wishful thinking approach, I think, are the ones who end up engaging in the warm, fuzzy New Age hype, and a lot of times they'll turn away from the material very quickly then because they don't want to do the work.
Yeah, I know it takes a lot of work to sort of create that life that you want. I listen to a lot of motivational speakers like Les Brown, and he referenced, I think it was Winston Churchill or something, who said that courage is going from failure to failure with enthusiasm. So, I mean, well,
I think it doesn't necessarily have to be a lot of work, but I think you have to be serious about it.
Yeah.
And again, I think a lot of people want to take the kind of lightweight approach to it, and that's when they get themselves into trouble. Again, as I mentioned earlier too, you also have to realize that it's something that you're doing, all the time, and that you can't say that I created one thing and something else just happened to me. That's where the role of responsibility comes into play. And I think that's crucial also, because if you're going to say, you're going to embrace this philosophy in a very conscious way, you have to be very responsible in accepting the fact that everything you experience stems from you in part, because you're the one putting out the intentions, you're putting out the thoughts, and you're getting back what you've told the universe that you want to create. And sometimes we end up creating some very painful experiences for ourselves, but there's a lot of personal growth and a lot of learning that comes from those experiences that we might not necessarily be aware of when we go into them. Mm-hmm. But when we get on the other side of them, we can look back and say, honestly, I would not have traded that for anything.
Right. Yeah. I think that's a good way of putting it. And it could be hard for a lot of people to come to that realization, or to allow themselves to understand that everything we do experience is because of what we've done. But, once they realize that, what would you say is the next step toward creating the life that you really want, instead of creating a life that you don't mean to but are doing it unconsciously?
Well, I would say the main thing is to get clear about your beliefs. You have to be very honest with yourself, very brutally honest with yourself at times. And, we've grown up in a society where I think we've allowed ourselves to kind of take it easier on ourselves than we need to. We'll shade our perceptions of things, particularly our perceptions of ourselves, and you're not necessarily getting a true picture. You need to sit down and say, okay, this is what I really think, this is what I really believe, this is where I did good, this is where I screwed up, and understand why you did it. And when you do that, it becomes a lot easier to become clear with yourself. Puts you in more of a mind frame and a way of practicing the execution of your beliefs in a more honest, truthful way. That's where the concept of personal integrity, something I talk about in Consciously Created Cinema, where that really comes into play in a bigger way. Because once you reach a point where you start to see better and more fulfilling results coming from being honest with yourself in terms of how you put out your beliefs and create your experience, there's no going back. You won't want to say to yourself, gosh, that way I did it before, there's no way I'd want to do that again.
Yeah. I wanted to briefly touch on gratitude, because working on manifestation and things like that, I've felt that gratitude is super key. Just the other day, I was actually out for my morning run, And usually I do the mantras of like, I'm grateful to receive love, health, wealth, opportunities, and abundance. And after I got back from my run, I actually looked in another pair of shoes and I saw $20 just laying in there, like in my shoe, which is really bizarre, but I was super grateful. How important do you think gratitude is toward conscious creation and the law of attraction?
Well, I think it's very important. Basically because it's another belief. And if you're making that sort of a foundational belief of how you create your reality, then that's going to start to permeate all the aspects of what you seek to manifest in different parts of your life. If you end up taking an attitude of you feel like you're owed or you're entitled, you might end up coming away disappointed because, the universe might say, well, I don't have to give you anything.
Yeah.
But showing a little gratitude for the successful creation of what you're seeking to manifest, it goes a long way. It's really it's like a metaphysical way of just saying thank you. People appreciate that when you do them with them on an interpersonal basis. Why should it be any different when you're talking about working with your divine collaborator?
Mm-hmm. Divine collaborator. That's a beautiful term. Thank you for that.
I enjoy that term.
Yeah, I mean, I think it really captures the idea well because, the way contraction work, it's a partnership between you and the universe. I mean, you can use whatever term you want to call it. You can call it God or Goddess or all it is or whatever term best. In any case, I think it's, the divine source that we all part of that we're working with to achieve this end. And, that's what goes making the results happen.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Connecting with that source is just so powerful. Do you think that there's a metaphysical explanation for conscious creation that maybe scientists and people who have a more scientific mind could understand it?
It's called quantum physics. A lot of scientists have come to the realization that when you employ the principles of quantum physics, at any given point in time, there's an infinite range of possibilities or outcomes that can stem from the point that you're at to the next point that you get to. And determining which one you go to, able to explain what happens. And a lot of them are having to come to the realization that there's some unknown force at work to bring about particular results. And they're beginning to realize now that it's kind of taking science into it hasn't been in previous a little bit. Everything that they're finding from the work and the research that they're doing it's also undeniable. So if you look at the way, in many ways, you have a good example parallel for understanding how conscious creation works.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that quantum physics is something that I would really like to talk about and possibly have you on again to talk about the quantum physics. Right now, I think we're running out of time, but are there any shameless plugs that you would like to plug in?
Well, as you mentioned at the beginning, I'm the author of 2 books, Get the Picture, Movies, and Consciously Created Cinema, The Movie Lover's Guide to the Law of Attraction, both of which are available in print and ebook formats from all major online retail or you can follow the book first. You can find my reviews.
Oh no, I think we lost him.
Yeah, Brent, you cut out there a little bit. Are you still with us?
Oh.
It seems like either the connection is laggy or the universe is
cutting us off.
Slowing down time.
Maybe we walk through the quantum physics.
You're probably telling us to wrap it up.
Yeah, but I just wanted to say thank you so much for coming on the show, and you've been so patient and so willing to work with us, and just a really amazing person. And I want to say thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, we look forward to interviewing you again in the future if you're up for it. So we hope that you have a great rest of your day.
That's you too.
Awesome. Well, everybody, please stay tuned for the card readings and the meditation. And yeah.
Stay awake and channel noise. Hey everybody, and thanks for tuning into this week's Project Primitive Life podcast. Shantastic Shine here with the collective card reading. I am using my Mystic Forest deck again. It's the same deck I used last week, and it's becoming one of my favorite decks. So I did this a 3-card spread, and generally this is kind of like a past, present, future, or a mind, body, spirit, really however it connects to you in the best way. But so the first card is the autumnal equinox, and it represents release. It's some beautiful autumn trees and a forest next to some water, and it's just really representing many areas of the world and how the deciduous trees prepare for the winter to conserve their energy by just releasing their life force, which is their leaves, and they required the rays of the sun as nourishment from the earth in order to maintain their big growth and just their appearance in general, the big luscious trees that we're so used to seeing. But it's not really a decision that trees wish to make, at least not in the usual sense. Instead, it's more of a natural response to the decreasing cycle of light that sets up the gradual and steady release of the tree's leaves. So the trees don't really want to shed their leaves, but sometimes it's important for them to shed something that could be holding them back, and that's important for us to do too, is to release anything that could be holding us back in a sense. So it's just really remarkable how these trees, for that matter, or all of Mother Earth's children, just know that they have to eliminate whatever it is that is holding them back, and they change with the climate, just like we have to change sometimes with the season and just the chapters of life. So although this is a seasonal shift, it appears to be a death of sorts to the trees. It's only a preparation for the next cycle of life, one that will just naturally flow with the more extreme contractions of winter as an aspect of the life and death and rebirthing cycle. And we find that represented in so many different ways in our life, but trees show that so well. And what that represents is now it is time to let anything in your life fall away that is no longer useful or needed for your emerging expression of who you are. Allow yourself to gradually shed what has become burdensome and is no longer just aligned with your soul's purpose. It's important to conserve your energy by allowing yourself more rest at this time as well. While you're making these preparations for the winter season, look especially at your material possessions. What don't you need that you're holding on to? Be brutally honest with yourself as you discern which of these can be given away and what can somehow be released in a more positive solution. Consider shedding some relationships that have served their purpose and are no longer viable to your well-being. It could be a job that's become just boring or devoid of interest and passion, and it's important to release all these things so you can come to a sense of much lighter energy, just like the trees that have become bare. Their nakedness kind of leaves them open for new experiences where their leaves once have just kind of hidden them, so they have to find themselves again. Life is really about the birthing process, and there's always something around the corner following a period of quiet and relaxation. So let go of whatever has outlived its purpose and just trust that something else will take its place. So that was the first card. And that leads us to our eagle card, which is showing up again. We actually had the eagle last week, and it's the card of communion and communication and coming together. And in this, it really is the man and the eagle spirit talking to each other and making contact through their eyes and through spirit, and understanding that the man has come to perform a ceremonial calling. And it's important for us to follow those ceremonial calls and know when it's time for the next chapter, because so many times we're being handed a new opportunity and we're afraid to leave the old opportunity or the old relationship. And it's important for us to explore what's around the corner and what the new seasons bring with the new chapters. So become familiar with this spirit energy that's guiding you, and the eagle is helping us through this time because it wants us to remember that we are one with the feathered beings as well. And we're not stuck on this earthly plane, and we're able to fly and reach the sky just as they are able to fly. And the eagle spirit's also often associated with the highest and noblest energies, encouraging us to let our spirits soar. Through this communion, it's important that we do touch the sky. Like I said, the sky isn't the limit. Really, the universe is just infinite, and there's so many possibilities. And we just have to know that we can be more than just these two-legged creatures clinging to the earth. We're intimately related to all life on all planets, and it's through communion with these expressions of life that we realize how really connected we all are. Whenever you experience a heartfelt communion with some physical expression of life, a person, a plant, an animal, anything else, it's only then that you truly feel how your life force is similar to other life forces. Living things are all around you. It is only a matter of differences in form. And essence is then articulated into the physical world in so many ways. You can manifest various shapes and characteristics and opportunities, and the essence of spirit just emanates through everything around you. Embrace it. The communion with nature is essential for you now, so take some time to do an open-eyed meditation with any nearby animal, plant, or any living thing. Look into the eyes of your friend, a neighbor, your companion, and just embrace everything that is happening around you. The eagle card has come twice now for us to really take that moment to sit back and to connect and relax your body as much as possible. Breathe consciously and keep your attention on the life form that you're communion with. After a few moments, you're going to notice that there's a sense of boundaries that have really just dissolved, and the melding of I and thou have disappeared, and you receive messages or impressions that you just find yourself in the flow of this unspoken communication just helping you through. It's so important. Now, while you're doing that, it's also important that you listen to music. And I say this because that is your last card, is music and harmony. While communing with other living things and just making that connection, also harmonize. Music is just what would life be like without it? It's not something that we've invented ourselves, really, rather than music has just been around since time began. It's got this dramatic texture, and it's existed ever since sound has existed. So without sound, it's just so hard to imagine what the world would be like. Embrace music and hear songs and hear the words for all that they are. And lyrics often have such a deeper meaning. Even silly songs, there's a deeper meaning behind what's happening. And for our ancient ancestors, paying close attention to sounds and rhythm and vibrations from the environment helped them to survive. Of course, it's also been kind of compelling for humanity to create music through our own voice and our own musical instruments. And as we've evolved, so have the instruments we've created, some of which, when they're played, they mimic the music of the natural world. There's more than just one instrument played or two or more people singing. The resulting harmonies then blend into this one unified sound that's so pleasing to the ear. Music's so important. If the notes are out of sync, there's a notable dissonance that can kind of be disturbing as well. In this card, you see two women with these stringed instruments creating a very harmonious blend. They're so absorbed in their playing that they appear to be in a trance, as if they're simply allowing the music to just flow through them. This is a time of considerable harmony in your life. One where various elements in your life are just flowing together smoothly, and it's important that you embrace it. Just in the musical harmony, it is in the interface of these elements that everything will merge into a cycle of symmetry and balance. Evoke feelings of harmony and happiness in your daily life. Embrace the challenge that is to sustain this inner accord. Even when there is considerable dissonance outside of your own mind, heart, and body, you're playing your own song. You are your own soundtrack. Make it a happy one. Make note of the sensations, the emotions, the thoughts that you experience. And when everything seems to be moving along well, embrace that and repeat it. Take 3 deep breaths and let your breathing be the anchor that reminds you of this state of consciousness and well-being. Whenever you perceive chaos around you, sing your happy song and know that it is just simply a mirror for your inner turmoil, and every song needs that kind of edge to it. Know that you can change it. You can bring your spirit up with the music and sound that you surround yourself with. When you bring forth the memory of those moments when your life was like a symphony, you'll then just raise the volume and raise the brightness of your daily soundtrack. And every time you exhale, you're releasing the energy of your internal state of harmony into the world, and it'll just have an amazing effect. It'll create a song that everybody wants to put on repeat. And just in general, like, music can control someone's entire world. If you're listening to sad songs, you're gonna stay sad. If you're listening to happy songs, you can't help but sing and dance with your friends. So surround yourself with amazing music, amazing energy, and connect with it, with your eagle spirit. And just know that during this autumn equinox, going into the winter, and embracing the cold months, that it's okay to shed your leaves and to shed all of that which does no longer serve you, so you can move on. And I know this has been a really long reading, but it's been a very important one too. So I hope that anyone who stayed along for this has gotten what they needed out of it, and you can go about your day. So thanks again. Check out shantasticshine.com and stay awake and shine on always.
Hello, and welcome to another 2-minute meditation. For this 2-minute meditation, we are going to find inner peace. So sit back, relax, and close your eyes. Begin to focus on your breathing. Notice your lungs filling with air, and as you breathe out, notice how they deflate. And try and get as full of a breath as you can. As you become aware of your breathing, notice any thoughts arising. Notice any feelings or sensations in your body. Notice any emotions going on within you. Now think of a time when you felt the most peaceful. Just imagine what peace would feel like. Feel that sensation. Feel that emotion. And the more you focus, the more you will attract into your reality. So by focusing on peace, we are creating peace. There are a lot of things going on in this world, and if we want to change it, we have to create that change within ourselves. Be the change you wish to see in the world. So So by focusing on more peace, by being more peaceful, we are creating that reality of world peace. Thank you for tuning in. Have a great week, and namaste. And 3, 2, 1.
Hi everybody, and welcome back to episode 2 of season 3 of Project Bring My Life podcast.
Yeah, it's a mouthful.
Yeah, it was. Can we try that?
If you want to.
I do.
Hello everybody, and thank you for joining us here on the Project Bring My Life podcast. My name is Lamon. Along here, Shantastic Shine. You can't see her, but she's here, and that's the way she likes it. So we are here with the Project Bring My Life logo. As you can see, it's beautiful, gorgeous. Got a little shadow underneath of the flower of life, which I think is absolutely brilliant.
Shining on with us.
Oh. It's a good day to be alive, I say. No? 3, 2, and 1. Yes. So thank you everybody for being so great and for joining us. Yeah, we'll see you in there.